I am so conservative.
Rationalize in my head. These are things I read in
And
the
I'm going to talk about Willow Creek.
Okay.
Willow Creek, a few years back, had
Remembered
invited.
at the time when Will Rogers said, I don't belong to any organized religion. I'm a Baptist.
Yeah.
I am so conservative. If you didn't jump to conclusions, you might not get any exercise. I am so conservative. I am so conservative. And welcome to the Unknown Webcast. Today is November 16, 2021, and this is broadcast number 265. For those who believe words are more injurious than sticks and stones, this is a bit of a trigger warning. I really am so conservative, I can't turn left even when I'm driving. And so Ron Hensel and I both drink coffee for your protection. Today, Samuel Say from Slow to Right blog joins us to consider how to talk about racism with friends. My name is Don Vino. I'm president of Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. in Wonder Lake, Illinois, which produces the Unknown Webcast. And our senior researcher is still Ron Hensel because he puts up with me.
You put up with me too, Don. So.
And Ron will introduce the sponsors of today's webcast. But first, Ron, 1 second, I'm going to bring in Samuel Say. Samuel,
Samuel.
greetings, and we're going to a really quick introduction by Ron Hensel.
Yes,
Here
greetings.
is Ronnie Baby.
Greetings from sunny Florida, where the palm trees came out, saw their shadows, and now we have 12 more months of summer. Our sponsor for this edition of the Unknown Webcast is the Grievance Industrial Complex, because things are never bad enough already. And our regular legal disclaimer, our guest on today's edition of the webcast, insert name here, Samuel Say, has no connection whatsoever to any of the satirical content of the Unknown Webcast, here to refer to as webcast, although we probably will not mention it again. This satirical content includes any and all commercials, end credits, puns, smart remarks, or anything else that might fall into the definition of satire. In the meantime, Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. bears no liability for or responsibility for anyone's opinions regarding this satirical content. And our regular notices, the opinions expressed on this webcast are ours and should be yours too. If you enjoy it or it really annoys you and you want to inflict it on someone else, to ensure your continued access to this program, please go to midwestoutreach.org, click the yellow donate button, and contribute as you feel led. And don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite video channels. And remember, this webcast is Y2K compliant. Greetings. Listen, we had a debate. Do we pronounce your last name Say or some other way?
What was the consensus?
Oh, what? We're having sound issues. This has been one thing after another. I think Satan does not want you on this webcast.
Let me click off. How about now? Is it okay now?
Yeah,
It's very
it's all garbled. It's like you're in underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the audience, just so they know kind of what is happening here.
You're speaking Klingon. No. You can hear us just fine, though, right?
Yes. Let me just.
It's sounding.
So this has been.
No.
No, it's
well,
really,
I can tell what
really
you're
garbled.
saying, but it's like hard to describe.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Should I leave the studio and come back in? Will that change anything?
Why don't we give that a try?
You can try that.
Everything's worth a try. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
In the meantime, we're going to give an audience explanation. Okay, so this has been a webcast that has been fraught with difficulties from the beginning, technical stuff on our end and apparently on Samuel's end as well. So bear with us while we kind of get this under control, or hopefully get it under control. He has some kind of an issue with his mic. as we were getting ready to go live, the connection at our provider went dead, and so Ron and I could see each other, but we couldn't bring anybody in. We couldn't do anything else. I went out to see what the issue was, and it only got worse because I couldn't get back in. So now we are live again, and Ron has done our introductions. Samuel Say hopefully will be back with us momentarily. We're not sure what's going on his end. But Ron, tell us a little bit about Samuel Say, because you've been following him for a couple of years. I was introduced to him by watching him on Tom Askell's show.
Okay. Well, I mean, he's one of many very, very fine Twitter accounts that I follow, and he's back. Could you say a few words so that we can test your mic?
How's it working now?
Oh, perfect.
Wonderful.
I'm so sorry for that.
Oh, I don't think it was your fault. We've been having, Don was just explaining, we've had technical glitches one after another, just trying to get started. Yeah. It wasn't working. For a while, I was the only one in this room, this streaming room, and I had no idea if I was ever going to get Don back in or if we were ever going to get you in here. And we were getting 404.
I kind of told him it was a rapture, but he doesn't believe in rapture. He's too reformed for that.
I'm sorry. I used to believe in it, but I believe in the rapture, just not when they think it's going to happen.
Right. Then he reformed his theology. That's the problem. So now we're all here. Hail, the gang's all here. Ron was just waxing eloquent about his coming in contact with you. I think, came in contact with you on Tom Askell's podcast and was impressed. And these are issues, as you might know, that are dear to the heart of many of us who really do believe the scriptures are the inspired, inerrant word of God that are the final say on faith and practice.
Speaking of say, is that how you pronounce your last name, or is it some other way?
Yes, it's Say. It's,
okay.
Yeah.
So you could say that his name is Say. You could say.
We just don't want to make any. Don't want to presume. We've presumed in the past, and it hasn't worked out for us.
No problem. When I was growing up, oftentimes, whenever I had a new teacher in a classroom, they would, as it's the norm, I think, over here and probably also in the U.S., they would say your last name first and then say your first name second. So as you can probably imagine, every teacher thought it was so original to say Samuel, and the whole class would say Samuel. You know, so
teachers can. My last name is French. It's Vino, but it's in Italian it would be wine. So I would have teachers that instead of saying my name, they would just tip the bottle, and everyone would know. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, I've heard your name pronounced a whole bunch of different ways, Don.
Yes, and they've called me other names as well. So
I see. Well, I'm glad we're all here. Hello to our regular eavesdropper, Benjamin. He just said hello to everybody.
Yep, we love Benjamin. So let's start with this question here, Samuel Say, because you started blogging about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And Ron and I, who are new to you, obviously, you don't really know who we are. Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. is a mission to cults and non-Christian religions primarily. So I hang around with Wiccans and pagans and, try to talk with Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, and our ministry is largely outside the church. However, in 1995, we had crossed a bridge where we had to make a decision. And it came down to this question. If we do not address false teaching in the church, and it has to be serious false teaching, doesn't that then take away our right to address false teaching outside the church? It's an integrity issue. And so we decided, no, we have to deal with false teaching in the church. And we knew that would cost us raising support and credibility and other kinds of things, because there are people who just don't really like you picking on whoever their favorite false teacher may be in the church. We're kind of running into that now, and you're doing, I think, a masterful job at dealing with it. And I'm going to say something that to some of the audience may be offensive, but I think it's true. You have at least the right skin color to talk about these issues. We don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like the third rail. You don't touch it, if you're white. We're, I won't say anything more. I can't.
Yes,
What
you
else?
will before we're
I
done.
Yeah.
probably will, but
So, what got you interested in? And I love the title, "Slow to Write." That comes from a biblical verse, "Slow to speak." You want to be careful about what you say. What's caused you to start writing, and what attracted you to writing about these particular kinds of issues?
Hmm. Yeah. So, um, before I was known for being against critical race theory. I was originally known by a small circle of people in my area and online for addressing the prosperity gospel. I was
Okay.
raised in the prosperity gospel,
mm,
and initially I started writing on social media years ago, like a decade or so ago. I was writing against the prosperity gospel. I mentioned that because that was really the first time I started writing, and then that was also the first time I started addressing false teaching within the church. So when you talk about addressing false teaching outside the church and inside the church, I very much understand exactly in some ways it is significantly more dangerous to address false teaching inside the church than
Yeah,
outside the church.
absolutely.
um so I started addressing critical race theory all those years ago because I saw that many of the same people who had left the prosperity gospel like I had were now being enticed by critical race theory. And I was like, wait a minute, guys, we are leaving a different false gospel to embrace a different false gospel.
That's why it's
I mean,
twist.
it's like, no, so but what really started it, as in what made me really want to start blogging was 2015. That's when I started. That's when I started sort of write. And in 2015, it was the height of the Ferguson riots,
Okay.
after a cop in Ferguson, Missouri, killed Michael Brown. Justly so. Every investigation pointed that he was actually acting in self-defense. Nevertheless, it started massive riots across Missouri and also across the U.S. And it gained a lot of um, reactions here too in Canada. It started a Black Lives Matter. Well, Black Lives Matter were already around before this, but it really made them more popular then, including also popular in Canada, where they had a very radical chapter here too in Toronto. And a lot
Right.
of my friends were starting to embrace Black Lives Matter, critical race theory, and all these ideas. And they were starting to label some of their church members and some of their pastors racist. I'm
Right.
like, God, what are you doing? So that's why I wanted to start blogging, because I didn't feel like calling every single person I was concerned about to tell them why I was against Black Lives Matter and critical race theory. I wanted to just start blogging. That way, people could just have an easy access into my thoughts on these issues.
by the way you say the word against means it shows me you live in Canada. So you're an authentic Canadian. I just want to point this out here.
So wait, I didn't real. How do you guys say against?
Against. We
Ah,
see there's Canada and the United States are two nations separated by a common language.
Right.
So I had a Canadian roommate, so I'm always saying a all the time now. It just uh and what else, bean. No, I don't say bean too often. How have you
Yeah.
been?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
yeah, against there are certain things that stick out. Like, okay, that's
yeah,
Canadian. So
So okay, so that's interesting. So that kind of attracted your attention. You wanted people to understand. We ended up when in actually in 2020, because the hashtag BLM was again in the public eye. And we started doing some investigating and discovered it is less a political movement; it's a religion.
yeah.
And so we wrote an article on that, which people were pretty shocked by.
Hmm.
And so that's interesting. So you have a religious movement, hashtag BLM,
Hmm.
using politics to advance their religious views. That's concerns me. But
Hmm.
back to where we're at here. So you were writing on that. And then you kind of increased your writings on the issues of racism,
Hmm.
not just in culture, but really in the church.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt about it. And I, back in my old articles, if people were to go back and read, they would, see me warning people that this is growing inside the church, and if we don't address it, it will divide a lot of people. It's similar to what Vadi Bokum talked about with his fault lines,
Right.
that there is a fault line, and it's been happening for quite a while. It just wasn't really being addressed at the time. Um, but yeah, it was around 2018. I've been blogging for 3 years by then, and 2018, you had the infamous um, MLK 50 conference, and then a week or two after that, you then had the T4G conference, which David Platt and Ligon Duncan had some talks that was very much infused by critical race theory. And that's what really, I mean, by then there was already some talks about these issues, but that's what really started the heavy push for Black Lives Matter and critical race theory
Hmm.
within the church. And since then, I've been addressing in various ways how this is affecting the church.
Hmm. So you would say it was right around, that would have been, you're talking 2018. Is that what we're
Yeah,
talking?
yeah,
50th anniversary of the Martin Luther King assassination,
yeah.
which I remember as a child. So does Don.
Mm.
Although Don, I don't know if you were a kid in '68. You were you married already in '68?
No, but I was fully engaged with the woman that I ended up marrying in 1970.
Oh, okay.
Uh, so
So um, the and I'm PCA, so Ligon
that's not
Duncan.
politically correct, by the way. That's
No, there's a company, I think it's called Pre-Construct Archaeology, that has the same initials.
okay, good.
But they're in England. So if this whole Presbyterian thing doesn't work out, we can maybe link up with them. Um, but the so you know I've been kind of sobered by Ligon Duncan's um, participation in this. I don't know that he's been that active in it since then, has he? I mean, I haven't really followed his activity along those lines.
Yeah. I want to say that I admire Ligon Duncan.
Me too.
He's his ministry has been a blessing to me and to many others, and I think he's nowhere near as infused in critical race theory as many others, some of his colleagues are. Nevertheless, there's no doubt that he's been influenced by critical race theory, at
Yeah.
least to a small degree. So, to answer your question, since that talk, I think it was sometime last year where he was, I'm forgetting, I don't know if it was a sermon or if it was some interview he was doing where he mentioned, and I actually wrote an article in response to this. I didn't mention him by name, but everyone knew who I was referring to.
Yeah.
I wrote an article said, do you love black people? And the idea was he was saying that that some of his black friends don't trust him because of what some people who look like him, white people, have done to black people in the past.
Hmm.
And he's saying he understands why they don't trust him. I'm thinking, wait a minute. That is sin. If you don't trust someone,
Yeah.
if you don't trust someone
Because he's a
because
member of a
of
group.
yeah, that is sin. And you're not to justify that. You're not to give an
Did
excuse for that. You
did
are
we
to
learn
say,
did
sorry,
we
go ahead.
learn nothing did we learn nothing from the breakup of Yugoslavia? I
Hmm.
mean, there were hatreds that went back hundreds of years. They were settling scores that went back from decades to generations to centuries
Yeah,
with the things that they did,
yeah,
because that person was a member of a different group.
All right.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and exactly, and the thing I was pointing out in my response to that was, Paul talks about how love does not rejoice at wrongdoing.
Right.
So we have embraced this deceptive and destructive idea that the right way to love black people is to justify sinful things that black people say or do.
Oh, that's
That is
well put.
actually not love. It's
Yeah,
hate, according to the
yeah,
Bible. Not only is it hate, it's actually racism. If you are afraid to address my sins because of my skin color, or because of your skin color. That's because you're judging me based on my skin color, and that's racist, right? Because if a white person said, "Hey, Ligon Duncan, I don't trust black people because one of my relatives was killed by a black person," he would say, "That's sinful. I understand your pain. I'm sorry for that, but don't judge other black people based on what that black person did to your family. So therefore, repent." But when it comes to a black person, we say, "Well, I understand." That's not right. That's partiality,
Yeah.
and that's racism.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder now, Ligon Duncan was born in the South. He's born in South Carolina. I'm from the Chicago area originally, but my wife and I spent a year in Florida back in the 80s before we finally moved down here to stay. We moved back up after that. And I remember it was quite a culture shock for me as a Chicagoan. I had naively thought that the civil rights movement and things that happened in the 60s and 70s had pretty much solved most of the issues. Then I come down to the South and I'm wearing a hat. It's one of those flat hats. They were pretty popular among just about everybody in 70s and 80s in Chicago. You wore them in the wintertime. It's a cap. It's like an Englishman's cap in a way. A guy comes up to me and says, only one kind of people wear those hats down here.
Mm.
And I go, what kind of people is that? And I knew as soon as he said it with his Southern accent, I knew. Yeah, I knew. It's like
Yeah.
my attitude was
Yeah.
I like this hat. I'm going to wear
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it keeps my head warm. Not that I need caps all that often in Florida, but sometimes the
Yeah.
temperature gets down.
Yeah.
I ran into some people who were, they were like, by this time, they were born at the turn of the previous century. Okay. And they had learned enough about going through the 60s as Southerners to speak very cautiously, especially to a white boy from the North like me. you know, so, but they wanted to make certain points with me. And it dawned on me, you know what, especially as I got older, that there wasn't a big difference in terms of years between 1983, which was the year, and 1968. I mean, that's like a blink of an eye in history.
Yeah.
And that whole generation that had been so opposed to integration in the South was still alive,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and so now, not that I think that it's just as easy as passing one generation away, but and another one taking its place, because Ligon Duncan's about my age. He
Mm-hmm.
might be a little. He's actually a year younger than I am,
Mm-hmm.
and I often think, if he saw that all his life, that's all he saw. I mean, growing up, he saw it every day. He saw it
Mm-hmm.
close up, and he saw it much worse than I did.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I wonder if, well, I don't. I just think that it's there's a lot of white guilt. There's a lot
Yeah.
of personal taking it upon myself.
Yeah.
Uh, and when you are related to the people who are doing these things,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you didn't say anything at the time because you're a kid, you're outnumbered, they're your family, they're older than you are, they're the adults, it's
Yeah.
yeah. So
Now,
Yeah.
I really want to get back to Samuel here, because one of the issues that I kind of want to address in talking to friends would be this. It's been my observation that in the main, those in a similar economic sort of social class, regardless of ethnicity, tend to get along pretty well because we're living really in the same place. It has nothing to do with skin color per se. And then, at least that's been my experience. Uh, and then I see things like the film Uncle Tom, which I thought was very well done. And again, that kind of affirms the sorts of things that I have thought and said and discussed with my friends who are of other ethnicities, regardless of skin color, whether they're Asian or black, or, that's just not the
Yeah.
thing that motivates us.
Yeah.
From your perspective, is that an accurate reflection, my idea here, or am I missing something?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think regardless of people's, I think people who are living together or are in the same neighborhood, same churches, and have so-called similar socioeconomic standings, there is unity, whether there is in wealth or poverty or whatever else. There's generally unity. At least there was. I think what's happening is there have been more of a cultural divide than a class or even ethnic or racist divide
Hmm.
amongst, as you guys very much know, amongst I struggle with this word, the
Mhm.
Appellation,
um
right? Okay.
Appalachian, yeah.
Yep.
There's a different culture. There's a
Yeah.
different attitudes towards other people across the Midwest or across the rest of the states, including white people.
Mhm.
Right.
Amongst black people in the inner city, there is a different kind of thinking um, that they may have. Some of them, not all, of course, for black people who are in the suburban areas in the U.S. or Canada.
Hmm.
So you have different cultures, but the issue with critical race theory is it is absolutely stripping people strictly based on their skin color. And because of that, it is teaching people, whether they are, black people who are poor or black people who are wealthy, they are telling them everything you don't have or everything that you have is because of your skin color or in spite of everything that you've been doing. So if you're a black person, for example, and you are even a millionaire, for example, or some athletes are, or some celebrities are, they're being told that you would have even more than you do if it wasn't for your skin color. They're being told that. And they're being told also that, well, it's now your responsibility because you are a privileged black person to look out for the other black people who have been unable to overcome their oppression the way you have.
Hmm.
So the issue is all the unity that over the last few decades have been increasing, it's being destroyed through critical race theory because it's
Right.
telling people no matter what you do, people like you are either oppressive or oppressed. So even if you have friends who are white or black or Asian, it doesn't matter. You are strictly who you are as a person. Your character is shaped by your skin color or your
Yeah.
class or your gender or things like that.
Well, I mean, haven't both LeBron James and Colin Kaepernick educated us on the fact that being a millionaire athlete, if you're black, is just another form of slavery?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
yeah, I mean, I think they both made that very clear.
Yeah.
So, did you see this bubbling up in your own local church at any point? This
Absolutely. Absolutely. I, I'll be honest with you. I generally try not to talk about it too much, but absolutely.
did
The number of people. Sorry, go ahead.
I take it you started reacting when you saw it?
Yes. So my blog, when I mentioned my friends, I was including my church members as well, black or white, or Asian or whatever else who had embraced critical race theory, and it had gone to a point where it's destroyed friendships
Oh,
within the churches that I was a member of. It's destroyed relationships and friendships, and I've been called an Uncle Tom, and a lot of these names. So you mentioned earlier that, and you're right, it's a little bit easier for me to address these issues because I'm black, and yet that also results in being called a traitor, an Uncle Tom, a coon, and things like
now,
that.
what I like to know is how often is it a white person calling you these names?
It's usually black people, but more than people would even dare to think about. It's
I'm just
oftentimes also white people as well too.
Really?
I'm just
Yeah,
amazed at the video evidence I've seen of white people who, once a black person expresses a conservative viewpoint, will actually use the N word
yeah,
in public.
yeah,
You know, they used this during the 2020 riots. They have this on film, on video, where they were calling, if you were a black policeman, you didn't even have to express an opinion,
yeah,
conservative or liberal. You just had to be working for the police.
yeah,
And white progressives were using the
yeah.
N word as a slur on those men in uniform.
Absolutely. It's easier in a sense for Black conservatives to address these issues or to be against critical race theory. However, absolutely the most hated group who speak out against critical race theory are not white people, but it's actually Black people who speak out against it. There are family members who will cancel you. There are friends who will cancel you because, in their mind, if a white person is against critical race theory, they expect that in their mind because they're thinking, well, you're just acting within your nature. You're just being a racist because they believe that, of course, all white people are naturally racist. But if you are a Black person and you speak out against critical race theory, the idea is, well, you're going against your nature. You're going against your people. You're betraying your family, your parents, your siblings, your friends. You're betraying your entire group because, again, in their mind, your identity, who you really are, is shaped by
And
your skin color.
and group loyalties are a very powerful force.
Yes.
I mean, we think of, okay, who's in my group because my group is here to protect me. At least I
Yeah.
hope.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I must protect my group.
Yeah.
So one of our sponsors actually, I don't know if we forewarned you. We have satirical responses, but we have a satirical sponsor that we want to hear from at the moment.
Yeah, they are very concerned because recently in an emergency meeting at the Toxico Corporation, Stu, the project lead, said these protests are delaying the project and killing our bottom line. So Foreman Larry said, all this over a few million dead fish. PR spokesperson Pam said, yeah, we're the real victims here. Across town, a hedge fund manager consults with his lawyer. I feel so left out of the culture wars. I can't afford to be left behind. But where do I find the right victim status to bring me the professional success I'm looking for? Meanwhile, Phil is meeting with his career counselor. I've come to realize that I don't have enough intersectionality on my resume. Do you think I should consider gender reassignment surgery to boost my job prospects? Well, now there's a solution for all these problems. The grievance industrial complex. The grievance industrial complex is the premier manufacturer and recycler of fine grievance products. It provides grievances customized for your political, economic, and social goals. It works closely with you throughout the design and implementation process to ensure your satisfaction. And every grievance industrial complex product comes with the moral high ground, the patented, moral high ground, which includes victim status, identity politics tactics, flawless far left ideology, and so much more. And free for a limited time, the Total Moron's Guide to Playing the Victim Card for Terrorists by Mustafa Birnow. It's even better than the Harry Potter series, says Dr. S.J.W. Jones. The grievance industrial complex, because things are never bad enough already. You need to check them out if you feel like you're kind of like not clicking with the trends and the movers and shakers. This is for you. So
See, you didn't realize what you were getting into here, did you?
that's why
No, but
we have that disclaimer at the beginning, because we had one guest who I don't know if I think she sort of appreciated our commercials and stuff, but she would always say something like this: "I'm not connected with this. I'm putting."
These are not my jokes. These are their jokes.
So we wanted to make sure
I
everybody had that protection. Yes.
I love it. I
Oh,
absolutely
thank
love it.
you're probably one of a small minority of people who like who enjoy our
don't
humor.
use the word minority. Let's say.
Sorry,
I was just thinking. I was just thinking. Oh, I guess I really am a minority.
you're a minority and a minority. Yes.
So, okay. So let's go back and say, how do you have a discussion with friends then who are buying into this stuff, recognizing that they may not be your friends in 4 minutes after you start the discussion?
Wow.
How does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great question. What I would say to that is remembering that our mission is not to make people like us. Our mission is to make people love Christ.
Amen.
And that includes then, of course, right? We speak with gentleness, patience, and truth, but recognizing that the most patient, gentle, loving person who ever lived was crucified on a cross for speaking the truth, right? So if Christ himself would be persecuted, that's also gonna included. We'll also be included so we'll also be persecuted as well, including being canceled by even our friends and loved ones after we share these truths. So with that being said, um, what I have I'm also a pro-life advocate, and one of the things that we do to change people's minds in abortion is that instead of defending our views, we want them to defend theirs. And the best way to do that is through the Socratic method. And actually, Christ himself used this a lot. And what I mean by that is Christ would ask people questions, all right, and then he would use their answers against them. So what I would do is often just ask people sincere questions, saying, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Right. So, for example, one of the things that I've done a lot is I'll ask people, "Okay, so just tell me what is racism?" Right, and then if they embrace the critical race theory view on it, then I'll just say, "Okay, well, what does the Bible say about racism?" Right? And then they'll have to either choose to agree with the critical race theorist or agree with Christ or agree with the Bible on it. And then through there, I can just keep asking them questions that will expose their hearts and will expose their allegiance on this issue. So asking people questions is ideal. And then I think I oftentimes say that the people who ask the best questions give the best answers. If you ask people questions, you can force them to confront their own inconsistencies. And then when they reveal their own inconsistencies, you can just say, okay, well, let me tell you then what the Bible says. Let me tell you why the Bible is right on these issues. So, again, and in short, ask people questions and then afterward, give them the answers.
Now, how old were you when you came to North America?
I was 10 years old.
So, did you come through the U.S. or just straight to Canada?
No, I came to Canada first. Although I am now, I recently became engaged, and my fiance is also from the Midwest. She's from Ohio, and
Okay.
Lord willing, I'm moving to Ohio soon.
Oh, so I take it you've been to the U.S. then.
Yes, yes, of course,
So
yes.
didn't you just notice the wall of oppression when you came in here? Even just coming to North America from Ghana, didn't it feel like, oh, why did I do this? Why did my family bring me to this terribly racist continent?
Oh, absolutely. I was like, man, I'm
I knew it.
here.
I knew it.
I'm like, I have all this liberty. I have all this freedom. Oh,
In
it's so
Ghana,
oppressive.
in
No, no,
Ghana.
no. In Canada
Oh,
and
in
or
Canada,
North
yeah.
America, just so much oppression with the liberty that I have. And
Well,
my mom,
you had probably enough liberty in Ghana, right?
no, not even close. No, my mother moved to Canada. I oftentimes say this. It's never lost on me. I was looking at a slave like a record of a slave ship
Yeah.
from many years ago, and it had a woman from my area in Ghana with my last name.
Wow.
And she was, well, I say woman, but she was actually a little girl. She was 9 years old, and she was being shipped from Ghana to Brazil. Thankfully, the British actually stopped that from happening. That's one thing that people forget. The British actually had to force the African chiefs. They actually had to go to war with them at times to stop them from continuing slavery.
Well, yes.
Nevertheless,
Wait a minute. Can we edit that out, Don? I don't think YouTube is going to
No,
allow that.
I think I'm going to put it on a loop. Actually,
Oh, okay. I hope we
uh,
don't get canceled, though. Oh, gee, I'm
uh,
worried now. I'm really worried. So, but repeat it again because I don't know if I totally understood you. You're saying that white people
yeah,
actually went to war to stop in certain. Now, obviously, they didn't do this consistently enough, or
of course,
but it happened. It's something that actually happened. What was
absolutely.
this?
Yeah, white people, the Europeans, the British particularly, ended slavery in
Yeah.
Africa. At least delegalized it in Africa. No doubt about
Well,
it.
isn't that just white supremacy, though? Come on. I mean, who are they to tell black people whether or not they can do that or
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that people forget is that they think that the Europeans came and forced slavery in Africa. No, that's not at all what happened. The I know because of my ancestors. who were mostly victims of slavery. They were taken as slaves by our rivals, the Ashantis, and they were sold to
But
the British.
but
They're
it
the
didn't
ones
happen
that.
until after 1619, right?
No.
It,
Well,
it actually
before
happened.
then,
You're saying it happened before 1619?
before the Europeans
Oh,
entered the continent, you had slavery
I don't know.
all over
This
the
is
continent.
kind of
Actually,
sketchy. Go
actually,
ahead.
the Arab slave trade was significantly worse than the Atlantic slave trade. But no one wants to talk about that.
But thought it
Um,
was just like an employer-employee relationship. That's what Dwight McKissick said a couple of years ago. I mean, he said it
yeah,
right to
no,
me. No,
it's
okay,
no, it's ridiculous.
okay. I
But
got to change everything now.
but yeah, so so yeah, I saw this record from a slave ship, and I realized that when Africans were being forced to when they were crossing the Atlantic, right, when they were on these ships coming, being forced out of Africa to the New World, it was a horrifying thing. There wasn't a single African that wanted at the time to cross the Atlantic and to come to North America.
Yeah,
But now you have Africans who are eager to cross the Atlantic Ocean to come to North America.
but that's
Why?
because they forgot that we forgot to tell them how oppressive we are.
Yeah,
They haven't gotten the news. Go ahead, tell
yeah,
me why. But tell me your
no, yeah,
version of the answer.
yeah,
Why
no,
they come over here?
yeah, but no, it's because there is liberty here. This in a sense, they're escaping slavery in Africa to come to freedom here because the unfortunately not all but many of the nations in Africa are many of the governments are enslaving their
Right,
people through a lot
right.
of corrupt and authoritarian actions there. It is horrifying. I know many people in Ghana who now Ghana has significantly improved over the last few decades, but yet it is still a very, very difficult nation to thrive in. And many people, many of my relatives in Ghana, are always telling me how blessed I am to live in a nation. And now Canada, unfortunately, is also moving the other way now. Canada is significantly becoming more authoritarian. Nevertheless, it
Yeah,
is still
yeah.
significantly more of a more liberal in a good sense than Ghana is.
Well, I think we can kind of maybe put up with some of the stuff you're saying here, as long as you don't make like a radical statement like slavery was ended because of Christian and church influences. If you don't go that far, that to try to explain why it ended with white nations first, don't go crazy and say stuff like that, okay?
Now, now, Samuel, I like your concept of asking questions. In fact, this one of the things when I teach on even reaching Jehovah's Witnesses or Wiccans, or to ask them a question that starts like this: Why are you whatever it is that you are?
Hmm.
And the reason is because if I don't speak to the issue that got them involved to begin with, I probably am missing the mark in the rest of my discussion. That's one. Two, in asking that question, they're going to tell me a lot of other things that are going to be helpful in a conversation. And it means that I have to do something that is unusual. I have to listen to what they're saying
Yep.
instead of
Yep.
trying to formulate my next comeback. I have to hear
Exactly.
what they're telling me, right?
Exactly. Part of I am, as I said, slow to speak, but that's the first part. The other one is quick to listen,
Hmm.
right? I want to be quick to listen the arguments of people. And look, there are times where, and I always say this to people, some people who have embraced critical race theory have embraced it because they've actually experienced racism before. And in their mind, they think the only answer to racism is critical race theory. They don't realize that critical race theory is actually teaching them to be racist in return.
Yeah, and wouldn't you
So,
say a lot of them don't even really know what CRT is? They just,
yes,
yeah,
absolutely. So asking them these questions, you'll be able to understand their experiences. You'll be able to understand why they think the way they do. You understand their ignorance of critical race theory, and then by knowing their experiences and their thinking on critical race theory, you'll be able to give them answers that they would probably otherwise not receive.
hmm,
So, okay, is it possible? I want to float an idea out here. Is it let's say that there is actual racism out there, because there is actual racism out there, right?
Absolutely.
Archie Bunkers do actually live out there in the world.
He makes me laugh.
So let's stipulate that. Secondly,
Mhm.
though, is it possible that in at least some cases, maybe even many cases, a interaction is misinterpreted as racism when in fact racism isn't there? Let's say I go into a store and I'm a white guy, and the store is owned and operated predominantly by blacks, and they don't immediately respond to me as I would have anticipated. Do I assume they are doing that because I'm white, or could it be because the guy behind the counter had a fight with his wife that morning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how he's acting is just disconnected from what's going on at the moment. I mean,
Yeah.
are there other reasons why people may behave in certain ways?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll tell you a story a very short story that I think will help with this problem. I was walking in a very dark tunnel one day. This tunnel is very isolated in the city. It's yeah, it's very dark.
It wasn't in Jussie Smollett's neighborhood, was it? Okay. I'm getting scared as you talk. I'm
Thank
starting to.
no,
Yeah. Okay.
thankfully not, because
Okay.
yeah, because Nigerians did not attack me,
Oh, that's a good
as he would say.
Fortunate,
um,
yeah.
yes, but
not
as
gonna
I'm
live
walk
in.
but as I'm walking in this tunnel, this white lady is walking towards me from the other side of the tunnel, and when she sees me, she's terrified. And then she grabs her purse very tightly. She gets as close to the wall as she possibly can, and then she just like walks very fast past me. Immediately, I'm thinking, "Oh, here we go again."
Yeah.
A black man, a white woman thinks that I'm going to hurt her. How terrible this is! But as I'm walking, I think to myself, "Wait a minute. Is it because I'm black? Is it really because I'm black? Let me think about this." Then I remember I should be slow to speak, quick to listen. I am supposed to consider other people as more significant than myself.
Oh yeah.
I am to hope all things and believe all things. With all of that, what does this mean? Well, if it was a black woman who did that, would I think she was being racist? No. I would think there's possibly other things, including maybe that woman is a victim of sexual assault. And maybe now she's much more apprehensive of being alone with a guy.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I'm a big man,
Yeah.
not because I'm a black
There you
man,
go. Right.
but I'm a tall and large man.
There you
Maybe
go.
that's why. But critical race theory again is telling us that the most important thing about me is that I'm black. And
Yeah.
that's what apparently everyone sees.
Well,
Everything bad that happens to me is because I'm black. And
okay.
everything, yeah, go
Now,
ahead, sorry.
I have, because this is going to feed into kind of what you're talking about. Um, I have this theory, which I really like. I don't know if it's true, but it seems true to me, that I think most people that we meet have developed a worldview, or not developed, but have inherited a worldview through osmosis. They haven't thought about what they believe. They just pick it up in the airwaves, on television, in magazines, in movies, in peer pressure. They don't think about it. They just hear it and adopt it, and it becomes what they believe. They never ask, is it true? Now, if that is the case, then they're acting on things like critical race theory, not because they've thought it through, but because it just feels right because everyone I know believes it. How
Yeah.
accurate is that?
I think that's very accurate. I think there's of course many people who know exactly what critical race theory is and they love to support it, but there are many others who are ignorant about it. They have no idea. A lot of people they know embrace it, so they think therefore they should embrace it too. They think it is the only way for black people to believe or to think. And then of course, as you mentioned earlier, there are also white people out there who because of white guilt think, well, they're being told that this is how the world is, this is how the world should be, therefore
Right.
they embrace it too. Many people are not thinking critically about this at all. It's ironic. It's critical race theory, but it's not truly critical. By critical, they really mean, critiquing not critiquing, but condemning ideas, not really critical analyzing
Right.
what's going on in the world.
And they usually don't. Many of them will scoff at you if you tell them it is based on Marxism. They'll
Yeah.
just
Oh yeah,
laugh. They'll laugh at you, but they don't. They've obviously never read anything
Yeah.
by the original authors who talk endlessly about Marx. They love
yeah,
him.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, what about this? Because I like questions, and you like questions as well. Sometimes when I'm talking to somebody like this, I will pose a question that kind of goes like this: if what you're saying is true, and if we're simply products of time plus chance, Darwinian evolution, my question to you is, so what if someone's racist? That's just part of Darwinian evolution. And if one color coded group, has more power than another color coded group, so what? That is just Darwinism at work. There's no inherent right or wrong about that. Isn't it the case that you really need Christianity's morals and ethics to even think it's wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. You're completely right. And they cannot answer that. They have no answer to that at all. They can't. If you ask them that, they'll just stumble and just say, well, but Christianity is the oppressor. That's all they'll say. They cannot think through it because as postmodernists, they really don't believe in truth anyways. They only believe that a person's lived experience. So if you're an oppressor, then you can understand things. Then you are a Gnostic who can understand things that others don't. Then you're really woke to what's really happening.
Yeah.
So they've replaced God and Christianity being the source of truth with the so-called oppressed group being the source of all things that that is true. But again, they cannot really explain why in light of what you just said. It's a bit of a circular kind of reasoning. They cannot answer these things at all.
they
Yeah.
just know. They
Yeah.
just know.
That's really important. And what I have appreciated, especially as we've been able to do this today, is kind of your first go-to is, well, what does Scripture say? I
Yeah,
should be slow to speak. That's really important. I should be quick to listen. I need
yeah,
to think better about those around me because there could be other issues going on. I mean,
yeah,
maybe someone's just lost a spouse or a child, or their car broke down, or I mean, there's a lot of things that happen in life that get us off kilter. And when
hmm,
we come into a social interaction with someone, we may not meet them in the way that they would expect, anticipate, or
yeah,
like, but it has nothing to do with them.
yeah. You know,
Yeah.
the a lot of throughout history, a lot of white people assume the worst of black people,
Sure.
which has created so many problems. And now, unfortunately, because people are doing the very same thing that racists did, or at least white racists did, which is to reject what the Bible says on these things, they are now also assuming the worst of white people. It is evil and it is wrong. The way to love each other, the way to do justice to each other, is to obey God and it is to submit to the word of God.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you, and when we get off the air, I'm going to get a little more personal information if it's possible, to
Hmm.
come back in the future, probably after the first of the year, and pick this up again, and we can be a little more focused with a little less stress because
Hopefully.
hopefully all of our technical things will work properly.
No
Uh,
problem.
but Ron has some time commitment, so we're gonna do two things quickly. We're gonna do a quick end credit walk out of here, and then you and I can talk for another minute or two before we close out today. Is that good,
Okay. No
But
Ron?
problem.
I just wanted to say, you've been such a blessing. Your blog, slowtowrite.com. Hey, everybody, if you're not reading this, in the words
Go
of
read it.
R.C. Sproul, what's wrong with you people? Read slowtowrite.com. Follow Samuel Say at Slow to Write on Twitter and on Facebook. I think they could just look up your name, right?
Yeah.
I've been extremely impressed with everything you've written ever since I started reading you, which has been a while now. So I want to make sure I put that huge plug in for you. In the meantime, let's give credit to where credit is due, to whom credit is due. Our resident cult leader profiler is Neil Before Me. Our wardrobe manager is See How It Fits You. Culinary services are provided by Chef Ham and Cheese. Our tinfoil head provisioner is Just In Case. Jehovah's Witnesses coverage comes from Armageddon and D Opposer. Our Mormon Archives manager is Polly Gummas. Our Liberal Denominations Bureau Chief is Lucy Goosey. Our transgender issues coverage comes from Ben Hur. Our special correspondent for cults based on the Hindenburg disaster and flying turkeys, OD Humanity. Our fact-checking supervisor is Yola Pullen. Technical assistance comes through Murky Research. Our legal advisors are at the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Grievance Resolutions Director is Giovanna Pisami. Our Director of Privacy Assurance is Wiretapping, and original idea sourcing comes from Drew A. Blank. The Unknown Webcast is a production of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in cooperation with Emergency Manicure Productions, both of whom are solely responsible for this content, although you will never be able to prove that in a court of law.
Never
Even once.
Happen.
Thank you,
I
Samuel.
love that music, Ron.
Yeah, well, I wanted something that was had the gravitas, that was necessary for this program. Thank you. I can just duck out the door now, right?
You can just back out the door.
Just back away slowly from the. Okay. Thank you, Samuel. Again,
don't let it hit you in the backside on the way out.
Don't let it hit me where the good Lord split me. Okay. I'll see you guys. Bye bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, Ron has another obligation he has to attend to at this time. So I really, like he said, I really also appreciate having you here. This is important. I had a friend, he's passed away a few months back.
Sorry.
That is darker complected than I. And he did a great book on Louis Farrakhan, and we spent a lot of time. We were friends for years. He loved reaching out to Jehovah's Witnesses. He loved the Lord. He was really passionate about that. And we would engage in these discussions all the time on, why do certain in the black community. In fact, one of the things that I asked him, it puzzled me, is why do I have such a difficult time speaking in black churches? And he cued me in on something that I was completely unaware of. He said, it has nothing to do with your skin color. It has to do with the culture of the black church. The pastor and wife are the first family.
Yeah.
The podium is something that he protects at all costs. They don't generally even invite other black pastors into their churches to speak.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, that answered a really big question for me. It had nothing to do with anything other than this is a cultural thing and is not meant to put anybody else down.
Yeah.
What other kinds of things come into play like that?
In terms of
just cultural exchanges between ethnicities.
Yeah. There are a few things. I mean, I think unfortunately, theology-wise, that's a big problem. The black church is very much deceived by liberation theology, which is similar to the Louis Farrakhan Nation of Islam type.
Sure.
Very much also the prosperity gospel is huge. So if you are not a member of those two movements, it is very hard for a black church it'd be unlikely for a black church to invite you on. But honestly, I think for the most part, the younger generation is a bit different now, but for the most part, it's this critical race theory is definitely threatening and is destroying a number of relationships. But for the most part, when it comes to just one-on-one conversations, black people, like white people, are overwhelmingly, willing to just talk to someone, just have a conversation with them. You've seen that. I mean,
absolutely.
A lot of this stuff is being forced onto people. They're being told, if you're a black person, this is what's happening, therefore you must think this way. And if you're a white person, this is what's happening, and you must think this way about yourself. And it's all lies. So there are a number of different things going on, but overwhelmingly, besides the theological issues, when it just comes to conversations, most black people, while they would theoretically embrace critical race theory or Black Lives Matter, practically they are willing to just have a conversation about life or about anything with somebody who is not black.
Right. That's been my experience as well. You're
Mhm.
just folks. You're just doing the best you can with what you've got, really.
Exactly.
And I, I one of the things I talk about, my first experience speaking in a black church is I just loved it. I had a pastor call me and ask me to come in and speak on Jehovah's Witnesses, and so
Mhm.
I thought that'll be fun. And now I am, as you can tell, my skin color is pretty kind of light. And so I'm used to certain kind of church structure. Here's what we do at certain times. So I asked, and I'm a time Nazi, as in addition to that, just by nature. So
Oh, yeah,
I
you were
said,
in for a surprise then, huh?
I said, so what time do we start? He said, well, we start about 11:30. I've never heard anyone say about 11:30, but okay, fine.
Yeah.
So I put it down. I said, okay. And so what happens next? He said, well, first we pray. And I said, okay, good. How prayers? How long do I figure that? He goes, well, yeah, it could be, I don't know, 10 minutes, might be an hour. It depends on how the Spirit leads. I stopped and I went, okay. And I said, and next, he said, well, next we take up the offering. Well, offering, what's that going to be, like 3 minutes? So I said, and then how long is that? He goes, yeah, it depends. Could be 10 minutes, could be an hour. An hour to take up the offering? He says, well, you got to experience it to understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so 10 minutes to an hour, and next is, well, then we have our worship. We sing together. I said, don't
Yeah.
tell me. 10 minutes to an hour. He goes, yeah, it could be. I said,
Yeah.
okay. And then he said, well, then you're up and you'll speak. I said, okay. And how long should I take? He said, when you're done talking, just sit down. And so I got to the church, and it was everything he had described. They were there to worship. They were there to be with each other and with God.
Yeah.
When they took up the offering, they didn't pass a plate. They had two finely dressed individuals up front holding out plates, and they sang this whole song, and they
Yeah.
danced up there, and they gave, and it was a cultural experience for me to worship with this group of people, and I would not have traded it for the world. I thought it was wonderful.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
next thing is they talk to you when you're speaking,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Yep.
They don't do that at my church.
Yep. No. It's very it's a when you're preaching, it's not just you preaching in a sense. You're preaching with them, kind of. They're responding to you. They're saying the amens. They're saying all of that stuff. So yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, okay. We're going to go off in a minute. I want you to stay with me a sec because I want to talk to you
Okay.
afterwards. But we are going to schedule you to come back, and hopefully we'll be a little less disjointed.
No problem.
But hopefully those who have joined us today have picked up some ideas on here's how you can do it. Number one, as you point
Mhm.
out, be slow to speak.
Yeah.
Do not make assumptions about anyone you're talking to,
Mhm.
because they could be saying or acting in whatever way for a variety of reasons that are disconnected to you. Two, be very quick to listen. And
Yep.
listen, that's really important.
Yep.
Don't be formulating your next argument. And three, think the best of everyone if you can.
Amen. Yep.
Would that be? Okay.
Yep.
So to everyone else out there, we're going to say goodbye.
Bye guys. Thank you for